Okay, so are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Because today we are taking a deep dive into free online English learning.
Sound good.
We're talking about the big names, the
Yeah.
ones everyone's buzzing about.
Yeah.
Duolingo,
What?
BBC Learning English,
Right.
Memrise,
Okay.
ESOL courses,
Yeah.
and even free stuff on Coursera.
Free stuff is good.
Who doesn't love free stuff, right?
Exactly.
Our mission. We're uncovering the hidden gems, busting some myths, and giving you the lowdown on what's what based on actual research, not just hype.
I like it.
So no marketing fluff here.
Okay.
Just real talk about what works and what might not be worth your time.
Perfect.
What I think is so fascinating is that we're not just talking about free apps here.
Right.
We're talking about serious science, like cutting-edge research on language acquisition, right?
Absolutely. These platforms, they're not just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. They're leveraging decades of research on how our brains learn languages most effectively.
Okay, speaking of science, let's talk Duolingo. You know that claim they make, the whole 34 hours equals a semester of college Spanish thing?
Oh, yeah.
I've always wondered, could that actually be true for English too?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because back in 2014, the City University of New York, they actually put that claim to the test.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and what they found was that learners who completed the equivalent of, one university semester of Spanish on Duolingo, they actually performed as well on reading and listening tests as students who took a traditional classroom-based course.
Wow, so it's not just a marketing gimmick.
It's not just smoke and mirrors, there's actual research to back it up.
So what's the secret sauce? What's Duolingo doing that's so effective?
Well, a big part of it is something called spaced repetition. Basically, the app, it keeps track of what you're learning and how well you're remembering it. And then it resurfaces those words or grammar points right before you're likely to forget them.
Oh, so it's like it's reading my mind, knowing when I'm about to forget something.
Exactly. It's all about timing. By quizzing you at those crucial moments, Duolingo helps to cement that information in your long-term memory.
Okay, so it's like outsmarting how our brains naturally forget things.
Precisely. It's like giving your brain a little nudge at just the right moment to say, hey, remember this.
So for someone just starting out with English, or maybe they just want to brush up on the basics, Duolingo could be a good option.
Absolutely. It's a great way to build a solid foundation, especially with vocabulary and basic grammar.
Okay, but it's probably not going to make you Shakespeare after just a few weeks, right?
Right. It's important to have realistic expectations. While Duolingo is fantastic for those initial stages, if you're aiming for, say, near-native fluency, or you really want to grapple with the complexities of English grammar, you'll likely need to supplement it with other resources.
It makes sense. You've got to have a good foundation before you can build a skyscraper, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so Duolingo's great for the building blocks.
Mm-hmm.
What about BBC Learning English?
Oh, that's another great one. And they take a slightly different approach. They're all about real-world English, offering a ton of resources from grammar explanations to news articles to podcasts, all designed for English learners.
Yeah, I checked out their website, and I was blown away by how much stuff they have.
I know, right? It's amazing.
But one thing that really stuck with me was that phrase, real-world English. What makes their approach different?
So it's like this. You can learn all the perfect grammar rules from a textbook, right?
Right.
But then you go out into the real world and someone hits you with a slang term or an idiom and suddenly you're completely lost.
Yeah, it's like you're speaking two different languages.
Exactly. And that's where BBC Learning English shines. They get that language isn't just about memorizing rules. It's about understanding how people actually use language in everyday conversations with all its quirks and nuances.
It's like the difference between learning how to play the piano from a book versus going to a live concert.
Exactly. You need both the theory and the practical experience.
So how do they do that? How do they bring that real-world element into their resources?
One way is through their multimodal approach to learning.
Multimodal.
It means they engage you through multiple senses, both audio and visual.
Okay.
So, for example, they might have a news report about a recent event.
Okay.
You can listen to the audio report, read the transcript, and even watch a video clip of the event itself.
Oh, interesting.
This multisensory approach makes the learning experience much more engaging and memorable.
It's like you're actually there experiencing the news firsthand.
Exactly. It's about bringing the language to life, making it relevant and relatable.
That makes so much sense.
Ah.
Okay, we've got Duolingo for building those foundational blocks, BBC Learning English for experiencing the real world of English.
Yeah.
What about Memrise?
Ah, memorize. Now we're talking about fun, memorable learning. They use these hilarious user-generated memes and native speaker videos to teach vocabulary.
Okay, memes. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, you know how sometimes it's easier to remember something if you can associate it with a funny image or a story?
Yeah, totally. Like when I was a kid, I learned the planets by remembering that phrase.
Which one?
My very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas.
Ah, yeah.
Each word represented a planet,
Right, right.
so it made it so much easier to remember the order.
And that's exactly what Memrise taps into. They use this thing called mnemonics, which are basically memory tricks.
Oh.
So instead of just trying to memorize a word and its definition, they help you create these vivid, often humorous associations that stick in your mind.
So it's like tricking your brain into remembering new words through humor.
Exactly. And the native speaker videos are fantastic for picking up on authentic pronunciation and intonation, actually hearing how those words are used in natural speech.
That's so important. Okay, so memorize sounds like a great way to boost your vocabulary while having some fun in the process.
Absolutely. It's definitely a more lighthearted approach, but don't let that fool you. It can be super effective for certain learners.
But probably not the best option if you're looking for like a deep dive into English grammar, right?
Right. You're not going to find in-depth grammar lessons on Memrise.
That's okay, though. It's good to know its strengths.
Exactly. It's all about choosing the right tool for the job.
Which brings us to our next contender, ESOL courses.
Okay.
From what I gathered, they're all about free structured lessons, which sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
But I'll admit, I got a little lost when they started talking about this CEFR thing. It sounds very official.
Yeah, it does sound a bit intimidating, doesn't it? But it's actually not that complicated. CEFR stands for the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages.
Okay.
And it's basically a way to describe your skill level in a language, from A1 for beginners to C2 for those nearing fluency.
So instead of just saying beginner or advanced, which can be pretty subjective, the CEFR provides a more standardized way to assess your English skills.
You got it. It's like a universal language for talking about language proficiency.
Okay, I see. So how does this CEFR thing tie into ESOL courses?
Well, what's really cool about ESOL courses is that they structure their content around this framework.
Oh, interesting.
So as you progress through their lessons, you're essentially moving up those CEFR levels in a clear and logical way.
It's like a roadmap for your language learning journey.
Exactly. And that's why it's such a good option for learners who really thrive on structure and clear learning paths. They always know where they stand and what they need to do to reach the next level.
I love it. No more feeling lost or unsure about what to study next. Okay, so we've got Duolingo for the building blocks, BBC Learning English for real-world experience, Memrise for vocabulary fun, and ESOL courses for the structured learners. That leaves us with one more platform to explore, Coursera.
Oh, yeah.
And this one is particularly exciting because we're talking about free courses from huge names like the University of Pennsylvania and Arizona State University.
Right, right.
I mean, it almost sounds too good to be true.
I know, it does. But believe it or not, these are legitimate university-level courses just offered for free through Coursera's platform.
Wow, that is amazing.
It's like having access to some of the best education in the world right from your own home. And they cover a wide range of topics, from English for business to English for academic purposes.
Okay, so we're not just talking about basic grammar here.
Oh, no. We're talking about in-depth courses that can actually help you advance your career or your education.
That's incredible. So what's the catch? What makes these free courses different from the paid ones offered on Coursera?
Well, in many cases, the content is actually quite similar. You're getting access to the same lectures, the same materials, and often even the same assignments as the paid students.
Wow, really?
Yeah. The main difference is that with the free versions, you might not get things like graded assignments or a certificate of completion.
Ah, okay. So it's like auditing a class. You get all the knowledge and the experience, just not the official credit.
Exactly. And for many people, that's perfectly fine. They're just there for the learning, not necessarily for a formal qualification.
Makes sense. Now, I've heard these Coursera courses described as being very immersive. What does that mean exactly?
So imagine, you're learning about English history.
Okay.
Instead of just reading about it in a textbook, you're watching video lectures filmed on location, maybe even hearing from historians who are experts in that specific period.
So it's about bringing the subject matter to life, making it more engaging and memorable.
Precisely. And they also use a lot of scaffolding in their teaching.
Scaffolding.
Basically, it means they start with the foundational elements, the basics that you need to know.
Yeah.
And then as you progress, they gradually introduce more complex concepts, building upon what you've already learned.
Oh, that's clever. It's like building a house.
Yes.
You start with a strong foundation and then gradually add the walls, the roof, all the other components.
Exactly. And this approach ensures that learners are never overwhelmed, but they're constantly challenged and making progress.
I love it. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, we have.
From brain-teasing spaced repetition to the immersive world of university-level courses.
Absolutely.
And it's all free. It's almost like, like having too many good options can be a little overwhelming, right?
It can be. It's like staring at a menu with too many delicious choices. You don't know where to start.
Exactly.
But that's okay, because we're here to help you navigate this smorgasbord of knowledge.
That's right. But before we dive into that, I want to get your take on something.
Right.
We've talked a lot about the individual benefits of these resources.
Yeah.
But what about the bigger picture? Like, how is this widespread access to education, especially language education, shaping the world around us?
Oh, that's a big question, and a really important one. I mean, think about it. We live in a world where communication is more important than ever.
Right.
And yet, there are still so many barriers, so many people who are excluded from opportunities simply because of the language they speak. But these free online learning platforms, they have the potential to break down those barriers, to empower people all over the world to connect with each other, to share ideas, to learn from one another.
It's like building bridges instead of walls.
Exactly. It's about creating a more inclusive and equitable world.
It's a beautiful vision.
Mm-hmm.
And it's inspiring to think that these platforms, these tools, are playing a role in making that vision a reality.
It's amazing. It really is.
Now, for our listeners who might be feeling a little overwhelmed by all these options, what's the most important thing they should keep in mind when navigating these platforms?
I think it all comes down to self-awareness.
What do you mean?
Well, before you dive headfirst into any of these platforms, take a moment to think about your learning style. Are you someone who thrives on structure and routine? Or do you prefer a more flexible, self-directed approach? Are you a visual learner?
Yeah.
Do you learn best by doing? By listening? Understanding your own learning preferences can help you choose the platform that's going to be most effective for you.
It's like choosing the right workout routine. You wouldn't choose a high-intensity interval training class if you're more of a yoga and Pilates person.
Yeah, exactly. It's about finding what works for you.
And what about goals? Should people have specific goals in mind before they start using these platforms?
Absolutely. Knowing what you want to achieve with your English learning will help you stay focused and motivated. Are you learning for travel?
Okay.
For work?
Mm-hmm.
To connect with friends or family? Your goals will shape the resources you choose and the way you approach your learning.
So self-awareness is key. Know your learning style, know your goals, and then choose the platform that aligns best with those things.
Exactly. It's about making these platforms work for you, not the other way around.
Great advice. Now, before we move on to our next segment, where we'll be talking about some of the potential drawbacks of relying solely on these free resources, I'm curious, from your perspective, are there any platforms that really stand out as being particularly innovative or groundbreaking?
That's a tough one because they all have their strengths.
Of course.
But I will say this, I'm really excited about the potential of artificial intelligence and machine learning in language learning.
Oh, yeah. AI is everywhere these days. How is it being used in language learning?
Well, some platforms are starting to use AI to personalize the learning experience even further. So imagine an app that tracks your progress in real time, identifies your strengths and weaknesses, and then automatically adjusts the difficulty level of the lessons to match your skill level.
That's incredible. So it's like having a personal tutor available 24/7.
Exactly. And that's just the beginning. AI-powered apps can also provide you with instant feedback on your pronunciation, grammar, even your writing style.
Wow, that would be amazing.
I know, right? And as this technology continues to develop, I think we're going to see even more innovative and personalized language learning tools in the future.
It's an exciting time to be a language learner.
It really is. Now, I know you're eager to talk about some of the potential downsides of these free resources, and we should definitely do that.
We will. But before we move on, I think it's worth acknowledging that, despite any potential drawbacks, the fact that these incredible resources are available for free is a huge step forward in making education more accessible to everyone.
I completely agree. It's a game changer.
Absolutely. So I guess the big question is, are there any downsides to all this amazing free stuff? It almost seems too good to be true, right?
You're right to be a little cautious because, like with anything, there are always two sides to the coin.
Okay, so what's the flip side here? What should our listeners be aware of?
Well, the biggest potential pitfall is that these platforms can sometimes create the illusion of fluency.
What do you mean by that?
You can spend hours on Duolingo, racking up points, and feel like you're making amazing progress.
Right.
But then you try to have a real conversation with a native speaker, and suddenly you freeze up. You don't know what to say or how to say it.
Oh, I've totally been there. It's like all the grammar rules and vocabulary words just fly out the window when you're actually trying to speak.
Exactly. And that's because language isn't just about knowing words and grammar.
Okay.
It's about using them effectively in real time, in different contexts, with all the nuances of intonation, body language, cultural references.
Like the difference between knowing how to drive a car and actually driving in rush hour traffic.
Right, exactly. You need both the technical skills and the practical experience to navigate those real-world situations.
So what's the solution? How do we bridge that gap between the digital world of language learning apps and the messy reality of actual communication?
Well, I think it's important to view these platforms as tools, not as the be-all and end-all of language learning.
Okay.
They can provide you with a fantastic foundation, but you have to be proactive about getting that real-world practice as well.
So don't be afraid to get out there and use your English in the real world, even if it feels a little scary at first.
Absolutely. Join a language exchange group, find a conversation partner online, watch movies and TV shows in English, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn and grow.
It's like anything else in life, right? The more you practice, the better you get.
Exactly. Now, another potential drawback to be aware of is the issue of information overload.
Oh, yeah, that's a real thing. With so many apps, websites, and resources out there, it can be overwhelming trying to choose the right ones.
It can feel like you're constantly bombarded with new apps and methods, all promising to make you fluent in record time, but the truth is, there's no magic bullet.
It's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Exactly. And it's easy to get caught up in the cycle of constantly switching between different platforms, chasing the next shiny object without ever really committing to one and seeing it through.
So what's your advice? How do we avoid getting lost in the language learning jungle?
Well, I think it's important to remember that consistency is key. Choose a platform or a method that resonates with you, that aligns with your learning style and your goals, and stick with it. Don't be afraid to experiment, of course, but once you find something that works, be patient, be consistent, and give it time to work its magic.
It's like planting a garden, right? You have to water it regularly, nurture it, and give it time to grow. You can't just switch to a new garden every week and expect to see results.
Precisely. And just like a garden needs sunlight and water to thrive, your language learning needs consistent effort and exposure to flourish.
So consistency, patience, and a healthy dose of real-world practice.
Got it. Now, one thing that really fascinates me about these platforms is the potential they have to reach people who might not have access to traditional language learning resources.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the most exciting aspects of this whole movement towards online learning. It's about democratizing education, making it accessible to anyone with an internet connection.
Exactly. No matter where you live, your economic background, or your schedule, you can now access high-quality language learning resources for free. That's incredible. It really is. And it has the potential to transform lives in profound ways.
So we've talked about some potential drawbacks, but it seems like the positives far outweigh the negatives.
I would definitely agree with that. These platforms are incredibly powerful tools, and when used effectively, they can open up a world of possibilities.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, there's one more question I want to throw your way.
Okay, hit me.
With all this amazing content being offered for free, it makes you wonder, what does the future hold for these platforms? Are we going to see even more innovation, even more personalized learning experiences?
Oh, absolutely. I think we're just scratching the surface of what's possible. And as technology continues to evolve, I think we're going to see even more immersive, engaging, and personalized language learning experiences emerge.
I'm excited to see what the future holds. Any specific trends or developments that you're particularly excited about?
Well, one area that I'm really interested in is the use of virtual reality and augmented reality in language learning.
Oh, wow. Now we're talking sci-fi stuff. VR and AR for language learning. That sounds incredible.
I know, right? It's still early days, but imagine putting on a VR headset and being transported to a bustling marketplace in Morocco or a cozy cafe in Paris.
Oh, wow.
You could interact with virtual characters, practice your language skills in real-life scenarios, all from the comfort of your own home.
That would be incredible. It's like the difference between watching a travel documentary and actually being there, immersed in the culture.
Exactly. And AR has the potential to enhance your real-world experiences as well. Imagine being able to point your phone at a menu in a foreign language and have it instantly translated for you. Or walking down the street and having your phone recognize landmarks and provide you with historical information in your target language.
That would be amazing. It's like having a personal tour guide and translator with you at all times.
Precisely. And as this technology becomes more sophisticated and accessible, I think we're going to see a major shift in the way people learn languages.
It's an exciting time to be a language learner, that's for sure.
It really is. And the best part is, these innovations will likely make language learning even more accessible and engaging for people all over the world.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here today.
We have.
We've explored the amazing world of free online English learning, delved into the science behind how our brains acquire languages, and even taken a peek into the future of language learning.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. But before we wrap things up, I want to touch on one more important aspect of this whole discussion.
What's that?
The ethical implications.
Ah, yes. The elephant in the room.
Exactly. With universities offering so much high-quality content for free, it raises some interesting questions about the future of education as a whole.
It does. And it's a complex issue with no easy answers.
So let's unpack it a little. What are some of the ethical concerns surrounding this trend of free online education?
Well, one concern is that it could exacerbate existing inequalities in education.
How so?
While it's fantastic that these resources are available for free, not everyone has equal access to technology or the digital literacy skills needed to navigate these platforms effectively.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Just because something is available online doesn't mean it's accessible to everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So while these platforms have the potential to democratize education, we have to be mindful of the digital divide and ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to benefit from these resources.
Absolutely. What are some other ethical considerations?
Another concern is the potential impact on the livelihoods of educators.
Oh, right. If universities are giving away their content for free, could that lead to job losses or a decrease in funding for education?
It's definitely a possibility, and it's something that we need to be having open and honest conversations about as a society.
It's like the debate we see in other industries, like music and journalism, where free online content has disrupted traditional business models.
Precisely. And it's a complex issue with no easy solutions, but it's a conversation that we need to be having.
Absolutely. So while we celebrate the incredible opportunities that these free online learning platforms provide, it's also important to be aware of the potential downsides and to approach these advancements with a critical and ethical lens.
I couldn't agree more. It's about finding a balance between embracing innovation and ensuring that everyone benefits from these advancements in a fair and equitable way.
Well said. So we were talking about the ethical side of things. It's a bit of a head-scratcher, right?
It really is. Like, on the one hand, we have this incredible opportunity to make education accessible to everyone.
Right, which is amazing.
But then there's that question, could this free access end up hurting the very institutions that are providing it?
It's almost like a double-edged sword, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers, but I think it's crucial to at least acknowledge these concerns as we move forward.
Absolutely. We don't want to get so caught up in the excitement of free education that we overlook the potential consequences. So what can we do? How do we navigate this ethical gray area?
Well, for starters, I think we need to be having more open and honest conversations about these issues.
You mean like within academia, among policymakers?
Everyone. Educators, students, policymakers, tech companies, everyone has a stake in shaping the future of education.
That's true. We're all in this together.
Exactly. And these conversations, they need to be happening at all levels, from global forums to local communities.
So more dialogue, more collaboration. What else? Are there any specific solutions or strategies that you think could help mitigate these ethical concerns?
Well, one idea that's been floating around is the concept of a hybrid model for education.
Okay, what does that look like?
Basically, it would involve offering some educational resources for free, like introductory courses or open educational materials, while still charging tuition for more specialized or advanced programs.
This is kind of like a tiered system.
Exactly. That way, universities could potentially offset the costs of providing free access to some content while still maintaining the financial stability needed to support their faculty and research endeavors.
It's definitely a model worth exploring. And it speaks to a larger point, I think, about the need for innovation and adaptability in the face of these technological advancements.
Absolutely. The world is changing, and education needs to change with it.
It's not just about adapting to new technologies, it's about rethinking our whole approach to education, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's about finding new and sustainable ways to fund and deliver education in a world where knowledge is increasingly accessible to everyone.
And it's about ensuring that everyone has an equal opportunity to benefit from these advancements, regardless of their background or circumstances. So there's a lot to think about, a lot to discuss, and a lot to look forward to as we continue to explore the ever-evolving landscape of online learning.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great place to wrap up this deep dive.
It really is. So to our amazing listeners, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of free online English learning. We have explored 5 amazing platforms, delved into the science behind effective language acquisition, and even grappled with some of the ethical dilemmas facing the future of education.
Remember, the most important thing is to keep learning, keep exploring, and keep asking questions.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to dive in, experiment with different resources, and find what works best for you. And most importantly, have fun with it, because learning English should be an enjoyable and rewarding experience.
I completely agree. And who knows, maybe we'll even see you in one of those virtual reality English classes someday.
I wouldn't be surprised. Until next time, happy learning, everyone.